What we've brought here today for you guys is 4 amazing, amazing, amazing artists that we work with that I'm really, 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 really proud that of these films that they've made. So Genevieve is going to be with us, and she'll be, actually, so Genevieve will be talking, she'll be talking about adapting works of literature to the medium of puppet film. And so she made Too Loud a Solitude with us back in 2008, actually, is when we made it. And she'll be talking about her process. Sam Koji Hale, he made a film with us, Yamasong, and he's going to be talking about post-production, visual effects, and using digital media to enhance the puppet storytelling process. So, and I will take a note now to say, a moment to say this now, that Sam was an artist that we worked with as a film director, and then he was such an amazing, organized producer on his own film that we actually invited him to come in to produce our whole series. So then he's been with us for the last number of years, producing everyone else's series. And he's an amazing, generous facilitator. So he will be actually kind of, well, we'll be leading a lot of this panel discussion too. But he's been very, very instrumental in putting this whole series together. That's some of his behind the scenes. Kevin McTurk is here with us today too. And Kevin will be talking about the camera and the subject and shooting puppets with digital cameras, because he's very technical, it's very good. And of course, yay, Toby Froud is with us. We're so proud of this film. It's being premiered in New York. His East Coast premiere is last night, and it'll be screened again tomorrow. And we're very, very proud of that film. And he is going to be focusing on world building from concepts to puppets and beyond, as he has built up gorgeous worlds. Everyone has built up gorgeous worlds, but, and then he'll have slides on his behind the scenes. All right, and that's it. So thank you very much. We are really, yeah, thank you. And next, I would like to start the program with introducing Genevieve to talk about her film.
Hi, everybody. My name is Genevieve Anderson, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the process of adapting an existing piece of literature into a puppet film. I do want to start by just thanking the Jim Henson Foundation and Heather Henson and Sam Hale and Handmade Puppet Dreams and the Brooklyn Academy of Music for putting this together. I'm really honored to be here. So, the clicker.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So my film is Too Loud a Solitude, and I just want to start by showing you a brief clip of the project just to give you some context.
5 years, I've been a book crusher, and this is my love story. This is my love story. It is the only one I have left.
Okay, so Too Loud a Solitude is the book, and Too Loud a Solitude was written by Bohumil Hrabal, who's one of the most beloved and renowned Czech authors who wrote many books, 2 of which were turned into feature films. Closely Watched Trains, which actually won the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film in 1967, and I Served the King of England, both directed by Yuri Menzel. So Too Loud a Solitude is a special book because it was written during the height of the communist regime in Czechoslovakia from 1948 to 1956, and it's an autobiographical reflection on the banning and destruction of literature. The book is actually still in print. It's been translated into 37 languages, and it was self-published in 1976 due to political censorship. There's actually many, many underground versions that circulated for a while before it was officially published in 1989. In 1994, Vera Kais made a live-action version of the film starring Philippe Noiret, the screenplay for which was actually written with Bohumil Hrabal's participation. So with the help of the Rockefeller Media Artists Foundation and Heather Henson and Handmade Puppet Dreams, we were able to make a 17-minute scene sample of the film, which we completed actually in 2008. This beautiful poster was created by Genevieve, who's actually here in the audience today. I did not actually adapt. I didn't do the work of adapting the book into the feature screenplay. My very gifted writer, Alex McGinnis, did. He wrote the feature screenplay, which we are now in the process of adapting into the full feature-length film. And he also wrote the script we used for the scene sample. So I thought it would be best for you guys to hear a little bit directly from Alex about his process.
It was a really fun challenge trying to adapt this book into a screenplay, because the book is all this wild interior monologue. This character who's crazy inventive with all of these different images and things swirling around, these long philosophical digressions. And so a lot of those had to be stripped out, but then the kernels that were left had to be built back up. And what concrete worlds and space did those lead to? Just so that we have an environment for the puppets to be in and move around in. And the other part of the strategy was I went and read as much as possible of other works by Herbal and gathered up a lot of biographical detail about him to try to be more sensitive to what were the small, hidden, little background elements that were lifelong obsessions and interests of his, and use those to really launch into these other new worlds that aren't quite in the book, but are just right there on the edge, and try to build this bigger space around the story, and hopefully try to find some visual equivalent to the wild beauty that's in the book, in the prose of the book.
Okay. So the reason I chose this material to turn into a puppet film is that it takes place largely in the interior of our protagonist, Hanta's mind, and so consists of these wild and dreamy landscapes that would be really difficult to approach from the template, literal template of a live-action reality. The world that Herbal creates on the page and engages the imagination in a way that I think only the fantastical realms of puppetry and animation can properly illustrate. So we are planning on using our puppets manipulated real-time with rods, and you'll see a couple of them here. They'll actually probably double in size for the feature, just to increase mobility. We're going to use that as the primary visual template, and from that we will design 2D animation sequences, compositing with stock footage, shadow puppetry, and various visual effects to create the world of the story. Because each of these techniques carries its own kind of emotional resonance, so each will be used according to how it best dimensionalizes the emotional resonance of any given passage of the book. So just to give you an idea of actually how we adapted the work, Herbal's work, into the film, I'm just going to give you kind of a brief overview, starting with a little passage from the book. This is actually the opening of, this is the very opening of Too Loud of Solitude. I promise I'm not going to be the whole thing. For 35 years now, I've been in waste paper, and it's my love story. For 35 years, I've been compacting waste paper and books, smearing myself with the letters until I've come to look like encyclopedias, and a good 3 tons of them I've compacted over the years. I am a jug filled with water, both magic and plain. I have only to lean over, and a stream of beautiful thoughts flows out of me. My education has been so unwitting, I can't tell which ideas come from me and which from my books, but that's how I've stayed attuned to myself and the world around me for the past 35 years. Because when I read, I don't really read. I pop a beautiful sentence into my mouth and suck it like a fruit drop, or I sip it like a liqueur until the thought dissolves in me like alcohol, infusing brain and heart and coursing on through the veins to the root of each blood vessel. In an average month, I compact 2 tons of books, but to muster strength for my godly labors, I've drunk so much beer over the past 35 years that it could fill an entire Olympic pool, an entire fish hatchery. So here are the storyboards that Christos Tamboliev created to accompany the text. And we start in black with the machine, with the book crusher. For 35 years, I've been in a book crusher. This is my love story. You see it coming down, and Hanta holding the book, caressing the book. Books have taught me that heavens are not humane. And then we go above the city, and we start to get a sense of where we are. Neither the heavens or any man with a head on his shoulders. And then we're kind of going through the city as we hear this voiceover. And anyone who crushes books for a living is no more humane than the heavens. And then we see Hanta in his space. My education has been so unwitting. I can't quite tell which of my thoughts come from me and which from my books. And now the water is actually come from the sky, through the city, into his little basement. But that's how I've stayed attuned to myself and the world around me for the past 35 years. So now it's coming in, it's hitting him on the head, we're connecting the outer world into Hanta's interior world. In an average month, I compact 2 tons of books, but to muster strength for my godly labors, I've drunk so much beer over the past 35 years that it could fill an Olympic-sized pool entire fish hatchery. And this is where we introduce sort of the second phase of the visual effects, where the book, you'll see in a second, goes into the water. Because when I really read, I don't really read, blah, 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 and we go through that effect. The book is in the water, the words are dissolving. Such wisdom as I have has come to me unwittingly, and I look on my brain as a mass of hydraulically compacted thoughts, a bale of ideas, and we see the books crushing in through the compactor and the bale hitting his feet. How much more beautiful it must have been in the days when the only place an idea could make its mark was the human brain, and anybody wanting to squelch ideas had only to crush human heads or compact human heads. And now he's putting the bale that he's created onto the conveyor, going back out again into the external world, where he's seeing the light, and then his mean boss, Hanta, you worthless, lazy idiot, you're years behind, and there's truckloads more coming in. So that's the end of kind of the first sequence. So now I want to show you how that sequence actually turned out.
For 35 years, I've been a book crusher. And this is my love story. For 35 years, books have taught me that the heavens are not humane. Neither the heavens nor any man with a head in his shoulders. It's not that men don't wish to be humane. It just goes against common sense. And anyone who crushes books for a living is no more humane than the heavens. But somebody's got to do it. For 35 years, I've watched avalanches of history and beauty land at my feet. Words no longer destined for this world. I am their last witness. The priest for last rites. The ferryman pushing them toward oblivion. All from my little basement beneath the city. In an average month, I compact 2 tons of books. But to muster strength for my godly labors, I've drunk so much beer over the past 35 years. It could fill an Olympic-sized pool, an entire fish hatchery. Because when I read, I don't really read. I pop a sentence into my mouth, and I suck it like a fruit drop. Or I sip it like a liqueur until the thought dissolves in me like alcohol. If I could, I would write a book about the greatest of man's joys and sorrows. But as it is, I am nothing but a refined butcher.
Hanta! Hanta, you worthless, lazy idiot! You're years behind, and there's truckloads more coming in!
Okay. So as you can see, the process of adapting material from the literary form into cinema involves a creative interplay of the existing text and then what's made possible, actually, by the visual form. We rearranged and condensed the text to fit what we had mapped out visually with the storyboards. And in this case, actually Alex created some original text to conform to the edit, because once we shot what we shot, and then we created the visual effect of the establishing city shot, we realized that we had to reform what we had originally mapped out with the storyboards and create something that was kind of altogether new, which is, of course, the beauty of filmmaking. So Hrabal's language is a good companion to the ethos of puppetry, because coming strictly from the first person, the language is purified by capturing only what is essential to the inner workings of Hanta's mind and spirit. Likewise, the puppet figure distills the complexity of the human form into a kind of a haiku. puppets are by nature inert beings, right? And they live only according to what our imagination supplies. Because you don't have the full range of human emotion that an actor conveys, a puppeteer has to convey the emotion through gesture. And because the emotional vocabulary is really limited, you have to use those limitations, to the advantage. So the puppeteer has to create gestures that are essential to the emotion that he wants to convey. And it's, for me, that distillation of feeling, that subtraction of everything that's not essential, that creates a really powerful puppet performance and is also what makes it extremely challenging. So through this combination of a purified essential language and a physical form that condenses meaning through a gestural language, we strive to create a cinematic language that actually just becomes poignant through its economy. So just a word about the puppets. Typically they're built to be robust, right, and to stand the wear and tear of repeat performances. Not my puppets, not at all. Despite its inherent fragility, there is a good reason for having chosen silicone for the material used for these puppets. So Hante is a man who lives alone and for whom the confines of his solitude create the framework, really, for the entire story. He's solitary, so when he encounters another form, be it a book or another person, this engagement really brackets kind of the depths and the quality of his aloneness. As he recalls his past and this particular sensual encounter with a gypsy girl that will forever mark him, we begin to understand how this physical sensuality that he experiences with her also parallels the sensual experience that he has when he's reading, when he's holding a book and caressing it, when he's savoring words. So this is a film that's therefore quite preoccupied with textures and materials and the particular sensual experiences that they evoke. And silicone is a sensual material. It's naturally translucent and therefore evokes the appearance of a living substance that resembles human skin. So this quality is important because it does help to visually underscore the central themes of solitude and sensuality that run throughout the book. Okay, so lastly, if someone is going to talk about adapting an existing piece of material to the screen, one does have to mention briefly something about attaining rights. So I could do a whole separate talk on this, one that would take probably several days. I won't do that. Did I mention that Froud drank a lot of beer? He was known for granting rights on cocktail napkins to his friends while drinking in bars, which has resulted in agonizingly protracted and expensive headaches. Not the fun hangover kind, but the other kind, for anybody who is interested in adapting his material to the screen. Although we did attain enough of a chain of title to make the scene sample, things have changed since then, and now we have a foreign international intellectual property rights attorney and the USC Law Clinic working on tying down the rights before we can actually start the process of fully developing the feature. So if you are planning on adapting a piece of literature into a film, any kind of film, I highly recommend that you choose an author who doesn't drink. So lastly, and thank you, Heather, with your permission, we're going to show this little clip of Eli Presser, who I think everybody on the panel has worked with, almost everybody.
Three of the four of us.
Three of the four of us worked with. He's an incredible puppeteer, and he was my lead puppeteer on Too Loud of Solitude, and he's going to be the lead puppet fabricator for the feature film. And this little interview, he speaks to some of the performative aspects of puppetry that I was talking about earlier.
I'm Eli Presser. I am a puppeteer and puppet designer. Ever since the moment that I first saw a puppet truly breathe and come to life in front of me, I have been in love with puppetry, and that has become the art form that consumes me. My mother is an artist, my grandmother was an artist. I would fake sick at school to go to my grandmother's house, and we would work on art, and she would hold salons and play piano and paint while I worked on my own art projects. Being in the company of artists was my greatest desire as a child, and still is, and being a creator of art was the ticket of passage into that world. I wanted to be an artist before I was a puppeteer, and I never found anything that I was any good at. And then I saw a puppet show. That moment there was a spark, and I wanted to make that. So I went home right after seeing the show and built a puppet and brought it to the company that had done the puppet show and showed it to them, and they took me under their wing. And from that point on, I apprenticed myself to as many puppeteers as I could and puppeteered as often as I could. My puppets began as bunches of tape, and one of my favorite puppeteers, his puppet, the puppet that he built that I loved, was a puppet that was made of rags. When you take an object that does not have the cues of life, these indicators, eyes, a mouth, fingers, that's where you have an even greater capacity for the illusion of life in those objects, because you get to create the vocabulary of life anew. My memory has always been terrible, and I think because of that, I've always collected things that connect to different moments in my life, or of moments that do not exist that I wish existed, and seeing objects that have that additional narrative inside of them live and breathe is very compelling to me. Even though it's not real, it at least triggers the same things in my mind, I think, that want there to be that life, a true life of objects, or a true life, a world beyond the one I understand. This is something I don't believe in. I do not believe there is a world beyond that. But, yeah, I don't think there is a world beyond the veil, but I have always wished there was, and I think finding ways of at least tickling that part of my mind has always been very exciting to me. With Too Loud of Solitude, you look at these puppets, and a puppet like that, and the question is, how are you going to make it live in the way that it wants to live? Every puppet has eccentricities in the way, in its design, in ineffable things that you don't understand. Maybe compounds that they're made out of dried in a different way at different points, so it wants to move its arm in a different way, and you find you pick up the puppet and you find the ways that its body wants to move, and then you add to that what you want it to be able to do, and you find compromises between the two of you of what it in fact can do most effectively. You can see that the puppet's arms want to do this thing, so maybe a string would be inappropriate for that, because a string would force it to move in a way that that puppet is not inclined to move. Or the need, in terms of the needs of a shoot, if you need a certain degree of force, perhaps this mechanism is going to work. If you require automated movement, perhaps you need an entirely different mechanism. As puppet designer, a large part of what I'll be doing is looking into the way that we will be telling the narrative, the way Genevieve wants to tell the narrative, the images she wants to create, what emotions she wants to evoke, and then we'll be looking at each of the different approaches that we know of for puppetry, and then the approaches that do not yet exist, and coming up with mechanisms to make the puppets live and communicate their desires to the audience.
Thank you.
Thank you, Genevieve. So we want to have a little bit of discussion. I was going to ask you a little bit about Prague. You traveled to Prague, is that correct? And how did that inform the development of ideas? Did you base things on specific locations?
It changed a lot, because it took things from the abstract, as rich and descriptive as the book is. You know, there's nothing like actually being in the place where the book was written. And there's so many people there, like friends of his who had albums with pictures of him in it, and they were showing. I mean, it was incredible, the proximity to Froud himself that we had just by going to Prague and by making a couple of phone calls. So it absolutely informed the project. And we plan on going back somehow, using some materials from Prague. Maybe we could even shoot some of it in Prague, because there's an energy there that's so specific to the book that I can't recreate. I don't understand it. It has to come from the place.
And it has such a rich puppetry tradition, so to be making a puppet feature in Prague, or researching at least, I think you would really be connecting to the roots of,
absolutely,
of what inspired him.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Shall we go on to Toby, Heather?
Yeah, okay, great. So our next presentation is from Toby Froud. So he prepared a presentation about world building from concepts to puppets and beyond. And like I said, he premiered his film last night. It was very exciting. So please, Toby.
Hello. Yes, so creating and building worlds physically from a story, from an idea, from your mind, that's how, you know, it's the part from imagination to reality. And so that's what I want to talk about, but I'm going to show you clips from the film and then also sort of set you up with how it was done.
Yes? But what is it? This is your lessons learned box.
Do you have a box?
Well, of course I do.
This old trunk.
A lot of lessons learned in there. Some good, some unfortunate.
Where's your position? Can you just give me your own position real quick?
Bill, would you put a... This is in. Okay. Hello. Okay.
So this is where it started. The blank warehouse. It's like the blank page, your mind. And my goal was to do this in the same space. So you build it, and then you'd shoot it. And so we had everything with us. We created the environments. But the idea, the way we filmed this is we had to build everything at least 4 feet off the ground and create the world in its entirety. So starting from small and sort of, drawings, sketches, quick things of what was in my mind. I had 3 separate, different environments that I wanted to portray, and it was the grandfather's living room and the file box room, and then the king set at the end. And those, as you can see, they're very simple drawings. I didn't do much. I just knew I had a vision of where I wanted to go, because I then did sort of mood boards. I did reference materials of things that I saw in the world, my father's art, Brian Froud, and all sorts of different things for people to draw on. The best part about creating a piece is getting the people together to do it. I relied on the crew I had. I had amazing, talented people supporting me, building things, and I was able to let them run with it. As a creative artist, you want to be able to run and be able to build and use your own imagination in certain ways. I was there to guide them, and that was the best feeling. So We started with wooden structures. We built, we frameworked everything out as you would a house. We skinned the walls. Things like this, which are great fun to do, it's sort of practical, and you got your hands dirty, and you just continued, and you formed these worlds in front of you that were massive and also contained at the same time. Everything you see around you, we built so we could tear apart and put back together. That was the idea that we needed to put together. Was the floor had to be removable, the walls had to come apart to film, to shoot the puppets, to get the puppeteers in and around wherever we got or had to go. We used a lot of blue foam. These are all materials from Lowe's, Home Depot. That's the magic, which is wonderful to me. You carve insulation foam and you create these stunning things that look like something else. I've always been intrigued by that, to see that, you create something one side, which is earth and undergrowth, and on the other side, it's blue. Also very light. We creating these things out of things that people could move very easily. We don't want to break anyone doing this. Puppets had to be light as well. That's the whole part, and it all comes down to the painting, the lighting, and the imagination of the people doing it. There you go again, blue foam. The best part about this stuff and everything like this is you can cut it apart. It's not precious. You can dig into it. You can stick puppets. You can put placeholders, holes, wherever you need it to go. You need to think of materials when building puppets, when doing puppet films that are conducive to that. You want accessibility. You don't want to hinder anything if you can possibly help it. So going through, this is the ending look, and surrounding the king and everything else is green screen. And a lot of people. You cut out a lot when you do the end product. So we go through people. The crew again, working on how to move these puppets, move these creatures. A lot of standing around with me going, well, what about this? Could you try this? Could you do this? Or I'd come in the mornings and go, I've had an idea. And everyone would look at me and go, really? I couldn't help it. I was having too much fun. It was a great toy box. So that was you build those worlds and you form those things, and then you have to do the same with the puppets. And the puppets, again, they start with line drawings. I did sketches and sketches of different things just to get a little character. And actually working with my mother, Wendy Froud, who did the Gelflings and from Dark Crystal and was part of Yoda and things like that. She and I work well together, and she actually put 3 dimensions to certain pieces to just help me figure out character. That was the best part about this, was collaboration. Working with other people to form your ideas. From a simple sketch to a head to just try and see movement, to see character design. That's the thing, is exploration, doing as much as you can to find your character, to find your world. So this is what I ended up doing with maquettes. These are posable, movable maquettes, and it really helped to just form the characters and to sort of give people a really wonderful visual clue as to what I was going for and heading for. And in the end, when you work out what your puppet's going to be, it becomes down to technical things. You sculpt the characters and the heads, and you have to sculpt them in blank poses, blank stares, for certain reasons of mechanics, depending on your puppet and depending on your puppet form. For these puppets, these were foam latex. They were cable controlled. They had blinks, eyebrow movement, and ear movement, and as well as being hand puppets that puppeteers held. So you have to think of all those things as you're doing it and try and be creative at the same time. You can't keep that sort of emotion and feeling alive as you go through, but it comes down to those certain aspects. But this is where it starts, you're with clay, with materials. Mold making, simple molds, plaster molds, going through process materials, and you end up with something that is mechanical and beautiful and has the potential for something. So it's raw skin. It has cables pulling from the inside and coming out, and it's like chaos. But the wonderful thing about that is that not only can you have access to the chaos on the inside, you have now a blank canvas to perform and to build your outside to look however you like it, beyond, into your character. So with costume work, would make beautiful costumes, and then I would go and mess them up. I would take cheese graters and rasps and all sorts of things and just tear them to shreds if I could, do all sorts of things, load lots of paint, line everything up, literally line everything up, and I had 4 buckets of paint, and my crew hated me for this because I would just have them everywhere, and they were brown, muddier brown, muddy white, and very muddy blue. And it was sort of a moldy bread type feeling of color range that I wanted to go for. If everything looked like moldy bread, I was okay. And that was the thing. I was always throwing paint everywhere, and that's why a warehouse is a great thing, because you can. There's no clean stages. But this is what happens. You paint a character on the surface and the outside, and that's what you're left with. It's a character with color and emotion and a beginning of a performance. Going through painting each head, and it was an experiment. I played around a lot. I had the crew play. I had different things. And obviously, working on costumes and pieces of the different characters. The best part about it, again, I was able to let that go in certain respects. I was able to explain what I felt I wanted and have people go off and achieve that and really sort of understand from a clear vision where I wanted to go. And it was an amazing thing for me to just be able to watch these elements come together and then to see them on screen or through the camera. Once you're done, yes, I may have touched them occasionally, but it was the idea that you see these things come to life in front of the screen. I was like a kid in a candy store. It was amazing, and that's the best feeling is your creativity from nothing, from your mind, from your imagination. All of a sudden, you see something like this in front of you, and you believe in all the hard work that people went through, and just strive to get out of this. It was a beautiful thing. The puppeteers that we used, and this is Todd. He performed the boy through the whole piece, and we've worked together for years. We puppeteered together and grew up performing in different ways. So he was the most important character, and he leads the story. You're with him, and that's how I wanted him to be the most connective. And for me, I was able to work with Todd in that same way. We connect really well, and I knew what I needed, and he knew how to get it. And that was the best part from this. He was able to get in all the awkward positions just so I could achieve the puppet thing. Each puppet actually took 2 or more people to perform. There was always a person behind the main puppeteer performer, trying to move with them, and at the same time, trying to watch a monitor. There were monitors darted around the floor of the area, and they would be watching what the camera saw. So there was a dance. Underneath what was seemingly maybe a puppet moving from left to right in screen was a dance of at least 2, if not more, people underneath. And it's a beautiful chaos to see. And to then get them to do it again and again and again. You can see here the world and how it was and how we are together and above us and beside us. And it was the difficult challenge of getting puppeteers and performers out of the shots while keeping the puppets in and getting the most out of each performance. And they're just fun challenges. And we laughed more than anything. If you're laughing and you're having a good time while building, while performing, while doing these things, you can be, and we did. We worked until the early hours, and you still get to, you get a sense of of achievement, and everyone just is really involved. The rehearsal of Spider, she took at least 8 people to maneuver. There's a person inside of her who at all times moving her along and then supporting people all around. And she was a whole other beast to create and perform. And it was amazing to watch a crew of people just sort of work out the movements. Each leg had to be moved out. Each arm, each hand, each movement of the head. We rehearsed for at least half an hour, and just keep going and going, and until you get a locked performance, or a performance that everyone knew exactly what they were going to do when to achieve the final result that you see on screen. And the people that built the characters also stayed, and they were part of the crew that filmed it. We had a crew of about 35 people when filming, and we shot 3 different sets, and we were always running 2 at the same time. So we'd have people finishing and dusting everything up, completely. We'd put dust everywhere. We'd be lighting a set while we were filming on another. We kept rolling and kept moving. If puppeteers weren't on one set, we'd have them move to another. And it was an exciting time, and it was good creative chaos. I like to call it chaos, because it is something that people really get energized about as a performer, as a filmmaker, as an artist. If you're in that moment, you're building something, and you're in that moment of absolute, chaos in artistry. It is wonderful, and you know it, and you feel it inside. So, I think now, how are we doing?
Digby! The door, Digby. The door.
What is it?
This is your lessons learned box. Every young boy gets one at your age. From this day forward, it will accompany you on your life's journey. Every time you experience something new or learn something of value, when life places an obstacle in your path and you overcome it, it all goes right into the box.
Wow. Lots of boxes. All beginnings. Oh! Come great things. From small beginnings come great things.
That was not your box, and those were not your lessons.
Grandpa, I don't understand.
the film really is called Lessons Learned, and there were a lot of lessons learned in this. But it was a fun journey and a fun adventure, and that's the importance of building a world and building, or creating a character, just in giving something back to the world from your mind, is to have fun with it and to really believe in what you do, and other people will too. So you see it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Toby. Now, what you said about the creative chaos reminds me of something that Muppet head writer Jerry Jewell once told me, which was working on the Muppet Show was like trying to put a hurricane in the bottle every week. And so it made me think of that.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you really quick, when we did the Portland premiere, you had mentioned during the Q&A there that you grew up, the area in England where you grew up was covered with age and moss and all these things. So when you talked about, hitting it with, paint and making it old, did your environment influence you a lot in terms of the look and the textures and the feel that you were trying to create?
Yes, yeah, and I think that it made it easier because I grew up in that sort of in England, in the countryside of Devon, and it is old. You walk around the fields or the moors, and you're walking on granite and centuries of history, and stone circles and different environments that way, and trees that have been blown by the wind for generations. And those things stay with you. No matter where you are in the world, that sort of stays with you. Your environment that you grew up in will always be with you. So I created this piece with my mind being where I grew up. I recreated something that really is where I grew up. That was my childhood. and I love that. I think that's wonderful. So I think it was a clear enough vision that other people could follow it. That was good.
Thank you. And Heather, now we're going to take a little break for Q&A.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We're going to now take questions from the audience. So this is our opportunity to talk to the audience, see what you have, and also our online audience, I think, is also available.
Yes,
that's right.
So just mention, for those that have a question, to raise the hand. We do have a mic runner, just for the sake of those that are viewing live. If you can just hold, if you guys can point to whoever you want to hear from first, wait for that mic, and they can ask their question through the mic.
Yes. So please go ahead and raise your hands, ask questions. Those of you who are online, go ahead and send your questions to, what is the Twitter address again, Stephen?
It's hashtag P as in puppet, OFF 14.
Great. Okay, I think I saw your hand go up first, so why don't we ask you first? And if we can focus on Genevieve and Toby, since you just saw them both give wonderful presentations, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Both presentations were fantastic, but I do have a question for Toby. Just because I heard references to time, and we practiced at least 30 minutes, and just trying to wrap my head around building that much into such a finite space. What kind of time frames did you work on as far as conceptual versus realization versus actual filming days?
Yes, we planned for probably a month and a half serious planning after I did the Kickstarter. I had the script and the ideas and the maquettes, and Digby, the first puppet, was built up until I did a Kickstarter in July, and we then about a month and a half after that, I got the warehouse for 3 months, and we built for 2.5 and shot for 9 days, and then tore out of there. That was fun. that was therapy as well, and it was good to be frenetic and quick about it. It was a great build, and people came in when they could. We had a solid crew of about 8. Pretty much full time. And then the rest came in when they could, weekends, because we all had other day jobs as well at times, and that's, life gets, in different ways. So and satelliting people, especially for puppets, a lot of the puppet makers, the foam and the mechanics and the costumes were done outside of the warehouse and then brought in later on to paint and finish off. So, yeah.
one thing I have to say with Toby, when I saw his script, when I read the script, he exercised a real economy in his writing. It's only a handful of characters and only a few locations. And what you see in the end result is absolutely amazing and beautiful. And on the producing side, he really was smart in how he used his time and his money. It was really amazing. I was impressed. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure, you go ahead.
It's sort of an analog versus digital question. I noticed you had the green screen in there, and then, but the puppets themselves seem to be sort of free of manipulation, and that goes to Genevieve as well. Is there some sort of like unspoken line that you'll do digital stuff or backgrounds and this and that, but the puppets themselves should not be messed with, and or like the armatures removed from shots, stuff like that?
Puppet-wise, it's sort of almost a choice. I feel you either choose to leave rods in, or you choose to take them out. Mostly, I would say, mostly on my part, I left the rods in and took the hands out. There were so the spider has a lot of hands around her, but all the and just a few little rods we took out, but that was all green screen. The rest of the boy and grandfather and Digby and all those scenes, we really didn't remove any rods. We just hid them. We put them in clothing, like the Dark Crystal did. You hide them in fabric. You manipulate them from elbows instead of that, and you choose the shots. And the puppets themselves were kept, they were kept as physical things, and only the background, as much as we needed to, was altered. I like to do that. I think it creates a wonderful challenge for the puppeteers and the filmmaker and the crew to have to work around those problems, to get a shot, to get someone to do that. And you as a filmmaker make that decision very early on, I feel, when building. You either are showing everything, or you're going to hide it, or you're going to take it out. You make that decision, and then you try and stick with it as much as you can.
I always insisted on the rods because I felt conceptually they were important. Admitting the artifice, we know it's a puppet, we want to see it manipulated. We know the life source is coming from somewhere off camera. But I discovered, and I think that it's important to see the puppet figure manipulated by human energy. I think it reads. Not to say that stop motion isn't wonderful, but the bunraku has a particular quality that I strive to capture on film. But that said, doing this film, when Evan took out my visual effects supervisor took out some of the rods, it was a revelation. I was like, the rods are ridiculous. Like they totally take you out of the experience. So that blew my concept out of the water. And then for the feature, my puppets are ridiculously small. They're super hard to manipulate. They're almost impossible to manipulate. Yeah. So they're like, I'm seeing the complexity of the other puppets here. Mine are like the sock puppets of the puppets here. So for the feature, they will be constructed to both move better, and the shots will be designed so that all of the rods will be removed.
Well, the challenge for you, I think, is because they're small, is the scale issue. Any shake, like if you're a puppeteer, it's before lunch and your puppeteer's hungry and their blood sugar's low, their hand starts to shake, and then you see it on the screen because you're in a close-up on your puppet. So,
completely.
Yeah. We have our first question from our online viewers. Stephen?
So this is Louise from the UK, and it's directed to either Toby or Genevieve. It's more of an intro. So for someone who is making their first foray into an animated puppet film, any particular advice, technical or aesthetic? I know you did a great job of kind of showing us the steps, but anything right from square one, advice for those who are embarking on this venture for the first time?
My advice would be, don't be concerned with the technical. Just do, if it's the first film, work from your heart and your soul, because puppets are such great magnifiers of what's happening internally. And you can worry about the technical stuff later. And I'm just speaking from my personal experience. There's time for that, but get the story told.
Yeah, don't be intimidated by puppets or other things you've seen or you see around you. Use socks. Use a sock puppet. Create that and be the best sock puppet you want to make. Don't feel hindered by not knowing a material, a process, or something. You can, if you want to learn those things, you can find certain little things even online. It's hard to learn some techniques, but you will always, you should always try and find a material or an idea that suits you, that you want to explore yourself, and don't feel, you know, I have to do it this way. I have to make a puppet with foam latex. I have to do all that, because it's hard, it's tough, and it doesn't always work. But a sock puppet always works. You know, a piece of paper works, and shadow puppets work. Things, different forms of puppetry or creating things. Think outside of what you may think you want to show it in, and show it in a different way. Try and get an idea out into the world, and then see where that goes.
All right, go ahead.
Hi, this is I guess for Toby, but anyone else who has insight can chime in as well. When you mentioned about collaboration and the importance of that, which you know I recognize, I've done some videos where I'm just with one puppet on my couch talking to a camera, and I know that can only go so far. And I want to collaborate with people. I'm wondering, and I guess it's a two-part question, between that, like where do you find people to work with if you just aren't necessarily in a large community, and also just with your experience with crowdfunding and Kickstarter, how do you know what to set, the budget's going to be? How do you predetermine what everything is going to cost between the fabrication and the location and all the people involved and all that? Where do you get those kind of figures? And anyone else, with insight can chime in as well.
That's a tough one, because it depends. Personally, I'd say it depends on where you are as well in the world. One place is going to cost a lot less than the other, and your costs vary in that sense. If you're in LA and you're in New York, they could be really high, and you have to spend more money in different areas, whereas if you live somewhere else, you could do something else. Besides that, you would find you can, during Kickstarter, it was amazing the amount of people that contacted me that went through Kickstarter to ask me questions, or to say, I'm a puppeteer, or I'm a composer, I'm this, I'm that. And it was wonderful to actually get to start talking to those people, and some of them I was able to, actually have come and help or be a part of it. And some I'm certainly keeping in mind for other things. That's the idea. Social media is the best part about that. Finding puppet groups in the community, talking to someone on a couch in a coffee shop, in a bar, and you have like-minded conversations. If you both laugh at a joke and you think, all right, this guy's cool, you can then see if you can use a puppet. And he doesn't have to be a puppeteer, but it'd be funny. Or he could be the puppet. 2 lines down here, done. Think in those terms of community and social media, and just connecting with people online. You type in Facebook, an open message saying, I need a puppeteer. You're going to get a hit. So that's true.
But be wary.
You might not like it, but you'll get a hit.
I often encourage people to find their local puppet guilds. They're out there, small communities, big communities, or puppet guilds. That's a good introductory place to start meeting people involved in puppetry, and then and build out from there. And if you're interested in doing film, start meeting people in your film community and build out from there. Kevin can probably say a little bit about the LA community, because he's been doing creature effects for years.
That's right.
This guy is amazing as far as who he finds for his projects.
But I was going to add to the Kickstarter campaign. I ran one for my current film, and I was floored by the number of people that came out of the woodwork to want to do compositions or puppeteer, and I've stayed in touch and recruited people through that. So it's a great way to go.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say I love the community building aspect of puppetry, and when I was seeing Toby, your spider with all the people on it, I was just loving the community aspect that comes together in this process, to have all these people coming and working on one piece together. So it is hard finding collaborators sometimes, but you can find them in your community, and I do. I love the puppet guilds, and I know in Orlando we have like a film community that people just come together and they make quick, fast films. There's communities out there. It's a lot about community, I think.
Okay, we're going to take one more question, and then we'll move on to Kevin's portion. I saw your hand right there. Mike is coming. Hang on a second.
Genevieve, thank you for being so articulate and eloquent. Everything you say is a beautiful quote. I'm writing it down. Toby, could we please ask you to pick up one of the puppets and show us how it works?
Yes, absolutely. Do you want to do that now or later? Is that all right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
And
And
let you
then
know,
is there-
afterward, the last hour, we
Yeah.
are going to have all of the artists will come down and demonstrate their puppets to the audience. But that's a more social thing. But this is a nice opportunity that our online community can see it too.
Okay, so Toby is pulling out Digby, who was the assistant.
I'm obviously very gentle with these. I brought them in 2 suitcases and they just pop out. It's they're very crushable. That's the nice thing about these is you want to keep, I like puppets to be soft, malleable, not very fragile if I can help it because puppeteers aren't. So, yeah, so here's Digby.
Well, so why are we here?
This is that's the nice thing about these is they are soft in the body. You know, they have certain joints, so you get that movement, but it's free. You know, you can do whatever you like. You know, feather dust, anything you want. The neck is very fluid. It's fabric, you know, in there, and then you can get into the head behind everything very easily to fix the mechanics on the inside. All the blinks and everything, just sort of coming through here and the house. This is why 2 people are used to do anything that happens in these puppets, and yeah, they need to be as accessible as possible for this sort of thing. And it always depends on your puppet, because a lot of the other films are actually rod puppets and they're beautiful, and that's a whole other technique of puppetry. This just happens to be the kind where you're down here like this, trying to get out of the way of a camera and do a performance at the same time. So it's kind of tough, but it's a lot of fun to play with. So yeah, later on, feel free to come up and have a look, and have a touch, feel the puppets, get to know them a little better.
Thank you, Toby. So just as a reminder, at the end of the session, we'll have networking, socializing time. So for the folks who are here, you'll get a chance to talk to the individual puppeteers and meet other people and ask more questions. So now we're ready to continue with the second half of the program.
Yeah, so we're going to have Kevin is going to come up and talk. We're really excited about his film. Let me see, you were here 2 years ago. You premiered your film, right? Was it 2 years?
Yeah. Here 2 years ago.
Yeah, that was wonderful. So he's here, and he's going to be talking about the camera and the subject, shooting puppets with digital cameras, and looking at the technical aspects. Do you want to add anything about this?
No, that's great. Kevin, your stuff is great. So,
well, hi, everyone. Hello, online world. My name is Kevin McTurk, and I directed the narrative of Victor Karloch, a Victorian ghost story puppet film. And before I start, I just wanted to thank Heather Henson, Cheryl Henson, the Jim Henson Foundation, Z Briggs, and Sam Koji Hale. I would not be standing here if it weren't for their support and guidance along the way into the puppet world for me. So, clicker. And so, here's my film. And a little bit about my background. I work in creature effects, and I've been working for the last 20 years out in Los Angeles and a bit of time in New Zealand. And I've worked as a mold maker all the way through puppet fabrication and a lot of seaming suits. That's from Hellboy 2, and more seaming. And I puppeteered on films, and I also was a suit performer for a New Zealand film called Black Sheep, which is it was painful but a lot of fun. So I have a great love of ghost stories, puppetry, and special effects, and I kind of wanted to do a story that embraced all of this. And I was greatly inspired by Edgar Allan Poe and H.G. Wells, and I always wanted, in the back of my mind, to do a deep-sea diver ghost story. So started roughing out the ideas of a diving bell tale, and the story started very simply with shadow puppets, and I wanted to do a shadow puppet diving bell, and but a little, and here's a giant squid that attacks the diving bell, but I wanted to mechanize the shadow puppets with servos, and they were held with magnets, so it was, and they were laser cut shadow puppets, so it was kind of a crazy idea that just started metamorphosizing. That's sort of the final look of what this little test piece was. And then suddenly it became a full puppet film with miniatures and in-camera effects. And then I built a diver as a proof of concept and got the film going. And let me show you a clip of, oh, and I was able to record with Christopher Lloyd and Elijah Wood for the film. That really was a wonderful experience. And so let me show you right now just a sample of the film.
Am I really alive? Just as Professor Marley calculated, I had landed in an underwater graveyard of ships. Hundreds of vessels of every era lay scattered about. With each labored step, I kicked up clouds of silty debris, as if awakening something ancient. A palpable evil. This was no place for mortal men. This was a city of the dead.
I love watching the reaction of people. We've been to a bunch of festivals, and just to watch the crowd jump is my favorite part. So my topic of discussion is cinematography and puppetry, capturing the puppet world on film. And I quickly decided this is a vast topic. So what I distilled it down to is Kevin's 10 rather subjective points of advice for puppet cinematography. This list is very subjective, so these things tended to work for me, but I am convinced you can make a beautiful film in any camera format. It's just, there's limitations to your budget and what you can do with the format you're working with. So starting with choosing a camera format, here's a list of sort of the very popular available formats right now. And that's, some of it can be found at a local camera store, but some of it you're going to have to rent from camera houses and can get quite pricey. I'm going to focus on the Canon 5D and the Red Epic because I shot the Canon 5D, the narrative of Victor Karloch was shot on the 5D, and my new film, Mill at Calder's End, was shot on the Red Epic. They're both, these are the advantages of the 5D, and it's, in general, it's a very accessible camera. Like if you probably have a friend that owns one that you could borrow, that you can buy them at Best Buy, and any camera rental store, you can find a wide variety of lenses and filters and batteries to rent. So it's very accessible. And being a smaller size camera, when you have a cramped set, it just, you can bring the camera into a very cramped set easily. So it's, I find it to be, it was perfect for Victor Karloch. The disadvantages are the resolution is limited. You can't do all the resolution things that you can do with a Red Epic, which is, the big thing is the ability to resize frames, and I'll show you an example. There's also something called the Jello effect, if you're not aware of, which is if the camera like a 5D, if you pan too quickly, the card can't catch up with what's happening, the information that's being fed into the card. And so it'll look a little blurry if you do a quick pan. The camera can't catch up to what you're doing. So that was a problem with me. I had to kind of limit the panning and the speed of the dolly moves on Victor Karloch. Here's the Red Epic and the Red Scarlet. Very high resolution, and I'm just, as I'm doing the post-production on my current film, I'm just floored by the ability to go into a frame. So here's a shot from my current film, and while I was shooting, I needed to, and sorry, that frame on the bottom is a little dark, but there was a box in the car seat that I wanted to, in the editing room, we wanted to focus on. And so I was able to take that top frame, crop in to this frame, and also crop into that. So I could get 2 extra shots out of that top shot. And there's no resolution. It doesn't get grainy as you crop in like that. So it's just a fantastic tool. And I was able to find a different take when I cropped in that I liked when I returned to the other shot. So just a fantastic tool. This is a shot from my current film where I rented a Red Epic and also a slider called an arrowhead a sparrowhead that I could mount the camera on for this cave sequence. And this was, thanks to Kickstarter, I was really able to do these elaborate shoots with a moving camera and shoot with a Red Epic. So these are the disadvantages. That's Peter Jackson with it. He shot all of The Hobbit, and they shot Prometheus with the Red Epic. So you're in good company. But the disadvantages are they're expensive to rent or own. If you have a friend, you can just beg to borrow it. It's a bit bulky. It's about the size of a toaster. So when you start getting the camera close to the puppet, it can be you have to build the sets a little bigger to incorporate the camera to get through. And there's a couple extra steps in getting the film workable on your home computer in the transcoding and memory storage. Okay, moving on. I found this pre-visualized with the Artemis HD app. This is an app I found online that is incredible. I highly recommend this for your iPhone or your iPad. That's what the app looks like. You type in all your camera information, and you're able to do this sort of thing. It works as a digital director's viewfinder. and it shows you in one shot what all the lens choices you would have. And from there, you can just snap a shot, and it'll save it in your photo files, and you can email this, you can download it, and it will print it out as that sort of information. And this is fantastic for storyboards. If you already have your puppet built, you have your set built, you can line them up for a quick shot. That's what I did here. So I wanted to see what different lenses looked like for different shots on Victor Karloch. And it's just a great tool. You can send it to, if you're doing the storyboards, or if you have a friend doing storyboards, you can send them the story, you can line up your puppet on your set. Here's some more ideas that I had, I was testing out. I had part of the set built, I had the puppet built. So I just wanted to quickly see what lenses I'll need to rent. So, fantastic tool. Okay, try shooting with prime lenses as opposed to zoom lenses, because there's 3 advantages to shooting with prime lenses, and they are a better glass quality. And when I mean prime lens, I mean a single focal length rather than being at like 24 to 70. It's just 50 millimeter or 85 millimeter or 100 millimeter. And if you rent a prime, and Zeiss primes are fantastic, you have a higher quality glass. So the image will be just infinitely better than a zoom. The speed, you can go, the aperture, you can open up the camera more for lower light situations with a prime. And the third advantage is that you have to think a bit more creatively on set. Like with a zoom, sometimes you can get a bit lazy because you can just have the camera set up the tripod and you can just kind of reframe and zoom. Whereas if you have a prime, you can you're forced to kind of find a better angle, and it will make your film more interesting if you're composing with a prime lens. That's what I discovered. The next one is, okay, these are, and so this is an example of shooting with a Zeiss prime and very sharp focus. The background, falls off very quickly because I was able to shoot lower light, but when you're shooting lower lights, the focus, the depth of field, which is the shallow, the near and far focus, gets shallower and shallower in lower light situations. So it falls off. You can use this shallow depth of field to your advantage. And the one shot I want to show you is this one we did of the night. And you'll see like his eyes are sharp, but his nose is soft, and the focus falls off very quickly. And this is, we used a technique, I had never seen it before, called free lensing, where you take the lens off the camera body, and you're holding the lens in space, and you're just finding focus that way. And it's, because it was so close, the lens couldn't do it unless you took the lens off the camera port. So it was a great technique, because it has a very unpredictable, wild quality. Like the focus will be sharp for a split second and then fall off. Wonderful technique, and a great solution to the intensity of the scene, because it's almost like I keep thinking of Hannibal Lecter, where the focus of his nose is soft, but his eyes are sharp, and then by the time you get to his ear, it's soft again. This is another thing I recommend. Shoot quick camera tests often, and this was very true of a technique that I was trying to do, an artificial ocean with a garbage bag as a foreground element. So this was the start of it. I just melted a garbage bag at work and glued it to a table and started just seeing what I could get out of movement. And there we go. And then this is a model plate of my puppeteer Fred Fraley. It's just holding the ship and rocking it back and forth. And this was sort of the plate that we were trying with. And then the speed of the garbage bag was very fast, so we slowed it down in post. And then the final.
25th.
Here's the final sequence.
800 nautical miles off the southern tip of Ireland.
We were aboard the cargo freighter Cassiopeia. After almost a week at sea, Professor Gregor Marley and I have finally arrived at that dreaded stretch of ocean that mariners have come to know as the Witch's Cauldron. How many ships had gone missing in this god-forsaken expanse? Dozens? Perhaps hundreds of vessels. The grey skies and ocean seemed as one, as if fused together without a seam.
Okay. Number 6 is lighting the set to hide the puppeteers. And there's several key lighting questions that are considered when you are shooting puppets on a set. Will you need to hide the puppet standing directly behind the puppet, or if so, lighting should be flagged so the foreground set is lit. And then there's what's called a curtain of light. Let me show you. My cinematographer, Wyatt Garfield, insisted we rent this thing called the Chimera, and it's the size of a pup tent. And basically you have a soft overhead light. We would turn this and it would be facing down, but it's got these, a whole series of honeycomb like channels in it. So it provides this vertical but soft light, and we would flag it off. And here's an example where we used it, where we had to hide the puppeteer behind the diver. And we found that if we just lit it with this soft filtered light, but had a sharp drop into darkness, we could lose the puppeteers. And it's actually an old stage magician trick where they top light the performer, and then they have the back severely drop into blackness. So I found it to be a fantastic way to hide many puppeteers. Okay. Number 7 is lighting in puppet scale. And this is a fantastic, I see it in Toby's films, and I saw it in Genevieve's film too, where you have actual candles or practical lights on set that are in the frame. So you just immerse yourself in the puppet world. When you actually see light sources that a puppet would be actually using. And so I got hooked on this idea by having my puppets all carry lanterns or the diver searchlight. And it was just a wonderful interplay of puppet holding a light source. And it's just a great lighting technique. And also, yeah, having open flame and on sets is exciting. So it's always good fun. Here's another example of the diver holding the light. And then I had these lamps on the diving bell, which were like Home Depot track lights in the distance. So it's kind of it just immerses you into you buy the puppet world. Puppet construction and lighting. Okay, this is something that Genevieve also touched on with choosing silicone as a surface to work with. And when you're choosing a surface, you're also you should be thinking about how light is going to be affecting it. So the fish I had swimming in that clip you saw was translucent vacuform, so we could just hit it with light, and it would be like a glowing fish. But if you saw it in real life, it's just clear plastic. But by lighting it, we could bring life to it, and it's also just choosing whether it's going to be a woolly character or with a lot of hair. If it's a furry character, you can take advantage of the fur by backlighting it, and you'll create this, the wonderful backlight effect on a furry creature. A final note about this is the eyes are critical, and having a good eye light so you get those eye catches. And so I always 5-minute epoxy over the eye surfaces, so we just catch the light. And Sam actually has a new.
Oh yeah, a doll making friend of mine recommended to use triple thick glaze because it doesn't yellow as quickly. I don't know if I haven't seen my puppets yellow yet, but I know the 5-minute epoxy does yellow over time. Over time,
yes, but it just adds to the believability of the scene if you just see the light in the eyes. And here we go. Here's an example of just catching the light on Victor Karloch. And then here's a new. That's the character from my new film, Millet Calder's End. And it catches it. It's a little dark in this one. And then there's another character from the new film. And number 9 is don't forget to shoot insert shots. And this will help you in so many ways, because when you get to the editing room, you'll have situations where the puppet enters the door, and then you have to, you know he has to get across the room, but you know the puppeteers can only reach so far before you'll start seeing puppeteers. So if you cut to the flower pot or something, you know, or stoking the fire or something like that, where you need to switch angles and rearrange puppeteers to help, you know, for the next setup. So don't forget to shoot inserts. This is, here's some inserts from my film. Like I needed to cut to this, this relic that was found in the ocean. And the reason I had to show it this one way is the next shot he was holding it. So we had to cut to the insert, and then the next shot it was mounted to his hand, and then we could bring it up into frame. So very critical. And then here's the diver is exploring the shipwreck, and we had this great helmet as a foreground piece. So it just really helps tie the scene together. And here's just some lanterns that were candles that were lit. You just feel like the set's lived in, and it immerses you into the story. And then this is something that I do that I just found really helps, is if you see the puppet actually physically contacting the set, there's something about seeing footsteps actually contacting the ground surface, or a puppet negotiating through a tunnel or something like that. It just suddenly is believable that you're with this character and he has to interact. Because if he's just floating in space too long, you don't quite buy the geography of the room like you. I find here's some examples. This is when he was getting chased by that ghost in that scene. We really threw him down this canyon, and you can see puppeteers, but the way he negotiated, he was making contact, and the puppet performance was a lot stronger too, because he was just swinging his way through this tunnel. This is a shot from when the diving bell goes wrong and it starts sparking. So we actually physically, we lined it with pyrotechnics and really exploded sparks in front of him. And there was something so visceral about it that, and he went flying back. So it was just a very tactile, visceral approach to puppet filmmaking, which I love. And then those are all my points of advice. And then my final point is just seek out the difficult shot, like challenge yourself. And this is an example of that. I really wanted the diver to get to the surface of the ocean in one grand shot. So we threw a cable over the top of the soundstage, and it was about 60 feet up, and we mounted a light and then fogged the whole room, and then just had a crew run with the cable and pull him all the way up to the light in one shot. And we never thought it would really work that well. And Sam was there holding the puppet legs and released it, and he started naturally kicking as he went up. And so it was just a challenging shot. So don't shun away from trying the impossible shot. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Kevin. Very, very technical. I saw a lot of people taking notes, so I think your talk was very helpful. Let's see. I was going to ask you a question. Yes. In general, for Narrative of Victor Karloch, you talked. This isn't more about technical; it's more about ideas, because you focus on the camera. Little backstory: we kind of divided up everybody's segments, so we each would talk about something different. But I'd love to hear a little bit about your conceptualizing, especially a little bit about the ship underwater and some of the design elements and things like that.
About the set design of the shipwreck. Well, a lot of my designing was kind of based on, I work at the creature shops, and they're always constantly throwing out these giant set pieces. And so I was doing a lot of dumpster diving to find set pieces. Like the diving bell, they were throwing out a big dish from Pirates of the Caribbean for some reason, and I saved the dish, and all the shipwreck elements were thrown out, flooring, all nailed together onto like skateboard half pipes. So it was a lot of just finding set pieces from what I could salvage and creating shots from there.
And one of the advantages is when you shoot, because you're shooting in a lot of darkness, is that you're creating the hint or the sense of an object without having to build the whole thing. And that allows the audience, I think, to fill in some of those gaps with their own mind.
That's right, that's right. I knew I could never build a full-size octopus, and I had the shadow puppet from built before, so I actually had the shot of when the octopus attacks is the physical, it's about the size of a yoga ball, the diving bell, and then I composited the shadow puppet attacking the diving bell. So it was kind of a little nod to shadow puppetry with a 3D object. So it was really exciting for me.
Great. Thank you, Kevin.
All right. And now I'm thrilled to introduce Sam Koji Hale. As I said, he is instrumental to us and our company. We've really, Handmade Puppet Dreams, this whole series has blossomed under him. He was an amazing artist in making his film, but he's an amazing leader, an amazing producer, and has really, this whole program is because of him. But the fact that we are able to produce so many more of the series. We just launched our Volume 6 series because he pulled together a great a team of curators to put that series together. But I can't say enough about good things about him. But right now he's actually just going to talk about his film, which is wonderful too. And he's focusing his talk on post-production and visual effects and using digital media to enhance storytelling. So he's really good at all that digital stuff. All right, Sam Koji Hale.
Thank you, Heather. And for me, the pleasure, there's a lot of benefits of having done, worked with these different films, but to me, I think, Toby's talked about it too, is the collaboration and being able to work with other artists, and we've been very fortunate in the past years as far as the artists that we've been able to work with, and you get to see this particular group for the first time together, and I hope you've been enjoying it. And I'll get into the last part, the post-production part, and then we'll go into Q&A. So what I'd like to do is talk about, and one of the audience members, asked a question about digital and analog, and where do you make decisions and choices. So what I really want to do, kind of like Kevin, is really tell you my subjective experience in working on my films and choices that I made and why maybe in some shots I decided to use a practical solution, a real physical object, and other choices, why I went with a digital solution. My other job is working as a visual effects artist, sometimes art director too, but a lot of the work I've been getting has been visual effects. So I have one foot in that world, and so when I'm creating shots and thinking about conceptualizing the project, I am thinking in terms of what are all the tools in my toolbox that I can use to build this scene or to tell this story or give you a character moment or whatever. So I wanted to share some of those with you, and with the two projects I've worked on, Yamasong, which was our Handmade Puppet Dreams project, and Monster of the Sky, which was a Kickstarter-funded project. Okay, so here's a trailer for Yamasong, so those of you who haven't seen the film will get a little sense of what that world is that I've created. As you can see, it's a real marriage of the physical, the puppets, and the digital, especially you know, effects and particles and light and things like that. And now I'd like to show you a little behind the scenes of how we made Yamasong. And you can see a little bit of the set work, but also some before and after what we start out with the raw footage shot on green screen and then the finished shots. That's one of my biggest sets right there. And the puppets with the green rods that we removed digitally later. Storyboards are very important for planning shots. And puppet calisthenics to warm the puppets up. Here's an example of monitor work that Toby referred to, where puppeteers are looking at monitors to know where they are in the puppet movement. And here's a before and after, the raw shot. Right here's the raw shot in camera. And then you'll see us wipe to, you know, enhanced backgrounds and effects. And this is working with a puppet to try to figure out how the movement is. I have two different puppeteers trying to get this fish puppet to work right because it was a little clunky. This one was fun because we had 40 pounds of dirt for the puppet to crawl out of. And this one I love because it was just a simple pedestal, and the movement and the beauty of the character rising up was one of my favorite moments in shooting. And the bird running was one of our very first shots that we tested. Thank you. So we start with green screen, which is a concept that's been around for a while. Prior to that was blue screen, and before that other techniques. But the idea of shooting the puppets or your subject, and then having this really bright green background that you can digitally remove. With digital cameras, the sensors are designed where they have twice as many green pixels as red and blue. So green screen is kind of the preferred technique for digital removal because the color is captured so easily by the digital cameras. And everyone gets to wear those lovely green suits. Rotoscoping is an important technique, especially in my approach. In Toby's case, the puppeteers are hidden below the camera, which is a great technique that's been developed for years. I'm kind of having to discover some techniques because our puppeteers are performing on a tabletop, so they're next to the puppet, they're behind the puppet. And there's some challenges in that. But one of the things you have to rely on is even after you eye drop the green and pull the green out, because if you look at the puppeteers, you can see that there are hot spots and shadows. And so those areas don't key out so easily. So you have to get in there and literally sometimes cut out pieces frame by frame and add some edge feather and things like that. So you can see them in motion. And if you just imagine, especially the puppeteer's arm that goes inside the bird or the rod that goes in behind her hair, were tricky things to clean up. And sometimes that requires rotoscoping, which is a frame-by-frame cleanup process, which isn't fun. I've done it a lot. Compositing is another great thing that goes all the way back to the early days of film. Back in the days of film, people would do multiple exposures and shoot maybe the same character, the same object in different places, and then layer it together, and you get the effect of the same thing, 4 or 5 of the same object, or 4 or 5 of the same character performing. Now digitally, what we do a similar thing. This is just the basic construction of one of the shots in my new film, Monster of the Sky. And what we did is the original shot, the first shot was just these 2 characters standing on the marble stage. And then we stopped the camera, and then we moved the little guy over here and had him doing some cleaning movement, and then stopped the camera and then shot him here, standing and cleaning. And then another one where the gear on the outside window, there's actually one hanging on the outside window cleaning. And then we have a flying castle in the background and clouds. So, oh, and then the little guy behind the little guy. So that we built in multiple passes and then combined together digitally. I don't have an example of that because we're building that shot right now, but I do have another example. This one is a marionetted red piece of fabric that's flipped upside down. And this is, I actually borrowed the fish from Yamasong to put in Monster of the Sky. And now you can see the reason why there's a red fabric is a body dropped into the water. So this is a little bit about constructing the scene or the shot. And then the idea, we shot in slow motion so it feels like it's in water. Here's another shot where we have these clockwork ghosts. Whoops. We have these clockwork ghost characters. And it's 4 characters, but we actually only built 2 puppets and then shot them, did multiple takes, and then layered it. The background is just an aquarium, shot various aquarium shots, and then picked the best one that looked kind of grungy and silty, and then added bubbles and texture and post-production and light effects. So you have the ghosts rising from the bottom of the river. Now we're getting into some of the harder questions. I built a puppet for Monster of the Sky that has these great, beautiful, massive wings, which we built practically. The feathers are actually old blinds that we grabbed out of the dumpster, that we cut up and then stitched together and created this beautiful kind of metallic wing look. But what we found is the wings were so large and unwieldy, I thought when we shot that we'd have a hard time actually being able to perform the wings because it might take 5 or 6 puppeteers because those wings were so massive. So we tried a different solution. I started playing with some animation techniques. Pixelation, where you shoot frame by frame, you shoot the wings frame by frame. Those are raw, but then I cleaned them up. And then we shot the puppet actually without the wings and then added them in digitally. So I thought I did a pretty good job. And then when we shot again later, I was working with my LA team on the second one. My Portland team did a great job. I love them. Then Eli Presser, who was in the video earlier, worked with his team and decided instead of having the puppeteers lined up behind the puppet this way, why don't we go vertically toward the camera? You have one puppeteer holding the puppet and 2 puppeteers, one holding the feet straight out and one behind the camera pulling straight forward. And he got this amazing, his team got this amazing performance of the wings, which I always prefer to have the practical solution to the digital wherever possible. So that'll be in the film. For Yamasong, there are these black undulating shapes. I call them soot storms, and I was playing with textures. And so this is Japanese sumi ink on paper and then animated. And then we added it into the shot with this trickster character who is, if you notice, he's marionetted. He's actually part rod puppet, part marionette. And then he pushes those down through the clouds to the world below. And for Yamasong, we had one character that was a cloud sprite. He was generated out of the clouds, and I wanted him to tread water. And I thought about maybe do kind of a Muppet-style puppet or something, you know. But as we started testing it, the arms were a little too floppy. So I wanted to have really good, smooth, controlled movement. And so I talked to some of my stop-motion buddies and came up with this puppet to give us that character. And so we shot everything live action and then handed the footage over to a stop-motion animator friend of mine, Pete Levin. And Pete animated for each shot so that we can get the character in the shots or doing the movement that they need to do for the shots. And here's a little composite example, dropping him into the shot and then dropping a rock down and adding atmospheres so you get a full thing. And we reduce his opacity so he feels a little softer, a little cloudy, and it marries him a little more into that shot. Another thing I work with is play with is replacement animation. For Monster of the Sky, there's a little character called a squidge, the little helper character. And because he's part mechanical, I've been working with doing replacement faces for him when he talks. And what we're going to do is I've made a little rig where we can get all of his face shapes in that one particular spot and then put the puppet in and have the puppet perform the line and then motion track the face onto the replacement faces onto the puppet face so he can talk. One thing that I think for all of us as puppet filmmakers and artists is trying to, sometimes we get into this place where we're trying to solve a problem, that something's not working right and we want to come up with a technique or solution or find one. And for me, because I sculpt in paper clay, my puppets are hard sculpted puppets, which you'll be able to see on the table over here. They don't have moving mouths for the most part. The tortoise character in Yamasong does, so he can talk and he has a mouth trigger, and that works for me. But not for the humanoid characters. I'm kind of scared of vent dummies, honestly, so the slits here are a little bit hard for me to embrace. But so what I'm working on now is finding a digital solution to give us talking, moving faces for these characters we've created. So that's my actress Sumiko Braun, who is who the character is based on, and she voices the character for Monster of the Sky. And here's a little video that shows you kind of how we do it. And many of you are probably familiar with motion capture, but you can see kind of specific to this project what we need to do to get to the point where we're trying to get to. So we take the sculpted puppet head and we digitally scan it. And then we have artists take the scanned head, clean it up, and rig it in Maya so it can actually move and flex and express. And then we add the textures based on photographic textures of the puppet. I work with Motion Analysis Studio in Los Angeles. They're a motion capture studio based on the Jim Henson company Lott. Good group of people. And what you'll see is they're doing basically facial calisthenics.
Eyebrows move up and down, then sad, kiss. Give me the maximum opening moves with your mouth.
And what they're doing is building a library of facial expressions.
So now he's going to take the data that we captured and basically track the dots. And then once he tracks the dots, we're going to use that to create a template of Christina's face. And then that'll allow us to take that data that's streaming in real time and put that into Maya to drive the character.
So once you have this all built, the advantage is you can do real-time recording of the puppeteer or the actor's performance, which I kind of consider a kind of facial puppetry, maybe. So there's sensors all around that are detecting the dots on her face.
Here, let me help you to wind it.
And then you'll see the same shot close up on the face.
You look a bit run down. Let me help you to a winder. There, much better.
So this is where we're going with the tests we're doing right now, and there are advantages and disadvantages. There's the time it requires to, oops, sorry about that. The time it requires to scan the face and personnel and getting the space and all of that for doing the motion tracking. We're also looking at software now that does trackerless tracking, where you're using your Connect box camera basically and doing the same thing, building the library and then capturing that and then exporting that to a Maya model to be able to do a similar thing to what we're doing with the data we have right now. But once you've created the moving model, the face that's doing the lines for the shot that you want, then we bring it into PF Track, which does geometric facial tracking. And it tracks the geography of the face, and whatever direction the puppet head moves, up, down, around, it can track that face onto there as long as you have about 70% of the information. And so then we track the digital face onto the puppet that's already been performed. So you can see what it looks like. You can see the wire mesh following it. And then this is a clip. So that was just a reaction shot, but that's the direction that we're going. And then, of course, there's more cleanup and dialing in the colors and the light and everything on the puppet to marry it more with the environment. So for Monster of the Sky, we have a few dialogue parts, and we have reaction shots, and something like this where we have the ghosts, when they find the body in the water, actually emulate her face for a moment. And then we have this is the introduction of the story, actually, where the character tells the audience essentially who she is and a little backstory. She's a holograph.
My mother looked upon the heavens when I was born and named me after the blue sky pure. She dreamed that I would one day step away from the cold, hard ground to walk among the clouds.
So that's, we're still refining that, but that's the basic idea. And then the last solution, which I think we can all agree as puppet filmmakers, is going full CGI. I only used it twice in Yamasong, and I like the physical and the tactile, and I think that's what we all like. I think we all love that. But there were some great solutions here. Yamasong, the patchwork girl, grows a heart. So to make a physical patchwork heart that pumped and moved like a real heart was an incredibly challenging thing, and we were running out of time and money. And then the planet, the prison moon that she lives on, also was a time and money thing. And my set guy said, "Hey, I'll build you a planet in Modo, and then we can composite it in After Effects." And so we went with that. And I like both solutions. And so in the end, I want to show you a little clip of Monster of the Sky, my current short film. You're going to see a lot of green screen. You're going to see a lot of raw stuff, but keep in mind some of the things that I talked about. Compositing, you're going to see some raw compositing. You're going to see some pixelation. You're even going to see, that shot with the facial, the face reaction that we did with the motion tracking. So here's a little bit of Monster of the Sky. So there's a little taste of Monster of the Sky. So those are some examples. Those are some examples of both practical and digital solutions. As filmmakers, you have the whole toolbox to pull from. Like I said before, I think we all love the practical and the real and the tactile, and that's something I think we're slowly moving away from, I think, in the world we live in. And so it's nice to be able to embrace that, but at the same time not say that digital is evil and awful, because everything ends up in a digital format. And if we need to fix a shot, or if we need to make something a little sweeter, or in Genevieve's case, the book falling in the water and the letters floating in the water, that's all part of the poetry of the moment and the scene. And so it's important to remember we have all of these things to pull from. So thank you very much. Okay, so now we're going to do a 15-minute Q&A. Stephen, do you have any online questions? Because I know we only did one from the online audience.
Yeah, not at this point. See, it's been very informative and descriptive, so thank you so far for all the panelists' comments and presentations.
Okay, great. So we'd love to get questions from the audience here. I see a hand go up right back there.
This is a question for Kevin and anybody else using DSLRs to do their work. You said the Canon 5D, 7D is what you were using at one point.
Yes.
Is there a reason that you're using that, say, over the Canon 60D, which has, of course, the smaller, the 3/4 size? Is that the reason?
The 5D Mark II is what I did Victor Karloch on, and it just had the largest plate, the largest capturing plate to sensor, yes, and that's why, and it was available to me, so that's where I went from there. But I think the 60, you said 60D? Yes. It's also a great camera too.
Yeah, I work in stop motion animation, and a lot of studios are using the 60D. For Yamasong, I used the 7D, and it was a similar kind of thing. The bigger sensor, better color, things like that. How about you? Oh, wait, okay. Go ahead.
I was just, so one of you said a piece about how to pull literature into your storyboard and all that. Where are some places that you can find literature?
All over the place. Everywhere. I mean, I think if you're a reader, just going to the library and having a couple of hours to sit on the floor with books is a good place to start if you wanted to adapt something from a story. The book that I adapted came to me through a friend who had read it, who thought, oh, this is a great book. So it was brought to my attention by someone who knew my work.
And if you're interested in children's books, would be a great place to start to do a short story, because the books you have art, you have a story, and you can build off of that. There was a question closer to the front here. Yeah, right there. Sorry.
My question is, do you guys, what considerations do you have for duplicates of puppets? Do you work with multiple copies of a puppet and like one for one shot, and then you need to be manipulated from like a different area? Or do you keep like extra parts of puppets for like close-up shots, stuff like that? That's kind of a question for everybody.
I made multiple divers. Like I had the regular walking diver that you see there, and then for the stunt scene, I always wanted to make a puppet that could mechanically do this. I think it was in one of the Indiana Jones movies. So I always wanted to make a puppet that had a motor that was self-contained, that you could throw, and he would flap his arms. So, and I've used him in the new movie too. So that was my replacement stuntman, and we knew we could throw him and he could take some abuse. And then on the new film, I was obsessed with, does anyone know the fighting nun puppet? It's like that. So I always wanted to do some kicking legs that were based on the fighting nun principle. So he's fighting off, he's trying to kick a monster away from chomping him. And so we built these parallelogram legs that could do that. Somebody would be back there with the rods. So those would just plug into his upper body. So he was seated, but the legs would be kicking. So I'm a big fan of building specific puppets for the different scenes.
And Toby, didn't you have a miniature boy or a small boy?
We had we actually used, I did use the maquette a lot for shot setup, and we nearly used him in the shot, the boy, but his costume had changed slightly too much for the thing. But for each of the puppets, each head has several skins on standby. So I always had three skins that were ready. One especially was painted, so I have extra sets. Because you can take them off, you can unpeel them if you need to. They're only stuck down in certain places for movement purposes, and you can peel them off of the mechanics and then put on a new one if it tears. Foam latex tends to tear on stress points, mouth corners, and anything, your eyelids and stuff, if you're using them. Fortunately, I didn't have to do that. It was quite amazing. It was shocking. Cable-wise, you always have replacements there. Any of the arms are actually, they can pop out and from the shoulders, so you can get them off easily. You can replace rods, hands, anything that was going to be touched, moved, and in certain ways like that. Always have replacements for, just in case. And then, yes, like Kevin's saying, you build puppets for certain special moments. So I had a boy head that was complete. It was just a complete surprise head. So if his eyes would go wider and his ears would go down, so his mouth could go like that. So it's just a special head that could do that.
And for mine, because they're hard sculpted puppets, I have replacement heads and replacement hands for shots. And the hands are like this or whatever. You can swap them out. Let's see. How about you right there?
I'm asking a question. Sorry. As an educator, we have a young man in the audience over here who looks like, are you about 10, sir? Yeah? 10? Okay. I'm thinking of all the 10-year-olds in our country for now and wondering, as you are doing your extraordinary work, whether or not there are opportunities for young people to learn some of these techniques in a simplified way using real puppets, and how, if that's not happening, what can we as a community that loves the puppetry arts do to encourage the next generation of puppet filmmakers?
Great question.
I'll take that one.
Yeah,
that's all right.
Go ahead.
I think so much of the mission of what I love about, well, what I love about the creative process is so amazing that I'm in awe of the creativity of our panelists here. And I want to encourage everyone to be able to find that seed of inspiration and creativity inside of them. I think everyone is empowered to be artists unto themselves. So a lot of the work that we do when we show these films, we do love to show the ones that are really high skilled with lots of technology, but we also like to also show ones that are more simply made. And often when we show the films, we often do workshops right after it. So you can either our workshop with a highly skilled craft puppeteer like Sam may do one on paper clay, but we also have done ones really simple ones that just anyone can do, because we want to empower people. See these films, see how you can bring your own creativity, you can manifest your own creativity into a puppet film, but then also empower people to be able to do that in their own lives. So we do, it's not here, but we have like some simple, John Kennedy has made paper kits with us that then we encourage kids to make so they can make something. But you brought it up as, I liked also your question when you said, what can we do as a community? I think that's interesting. I don't know if anyone else wants to answer part of Carol's questions.
I'd say, you know, things like this. This is our first symposium, and, you know, it's not just to the audience here, but to the internet audience as well. And I personally would love to see, you know, these kinds of things continue. We've been doing talks, you know, in a theater environment, in small locations and things. But you know, it'd be great to let people know that there are films being made, puppet films, and high quality puppet films, and teaching workshops. And we have a children's volume, and I did a thing a few months ago, or a while back, at Monterey Children's Museum. And after we showed the children's films, we made the John Kennedy paper puppets. And that's a great activity, and the kids really got into it. And that's the place to introduce it, really. You know, that's where you get the kids inspired, and then they want to make a film. You know, and you can do that with your iPhone and make your first film with a puppet, and then build from there. And as time goes by and their skills increase, and they meet other puppeteers and start working on other projects with people, then they get better at it. Then they decide to try to build a harder puppet or a more sophisticated puppet. And it's a learning and growing and building process.
I just wanted to add to what you just said. I think it would be awesome to do like a partnership with the maker fairs and with the puppetry community, because it seems like makers and puppeteers are so similar. Mm-hmm. And that's one aspect to it. Like, the maker fairs are so popular, and especially with kids, that they could be constructing like puppets and armatures and things.
Yeah. In our little world down in Orlando, Florida, we were part of Maker Fair with our little company, IBEX Puppetry, down there in the Orlando Maker Fair. And I saw that the Creature Shop from London also, I think Pete Brook was at Maker Fair doing something. Mm-hmm. I don't know, have you guys been involved in Maker Fair?
Not yet.
Not yet, love to be.
What is it?
Oh, it's the whole DIY, do-it-yourself movement. I love the Maker Fair movement, and we were talking about how, like, we were just discussing the other day about how, like, some basic craft building skills seem to be being taught to kids these days. And
right, yeah, I've been an adjunct on and off in different universities, and I've found that there are some students in their early 20s who don't know how to sew or don't know how to craft things, and I don't know if that's all kids, all 20-somethings, but I think there is, in some areas, children aren't learning certain skills.
Yeah, we're maybe more stuck on, maybe it's like more, I don't know, computer games and stuff like that. So, but at the same time, as pendulum swings both ways, or there's always these extremes, there seems to be a great also movement going on of people crafting things. And so the maker fairs are a place for the crafters, but to teach all those, yeah.
And I saw a hand in the back. I'm sorry we skipped over you. Go ahead.
My question is for Genevieve, Toby, I guess all of you, and it's about music. I was really struck by the marriage of how the music and how the emotional transport happened, particularly in Genevieve's film and Toby's film. And also then in Kevin, your film, I felt like there was a moment where there was this dislocated, like, singing voice. It was almost like a spirit, almost just preceding the real scary moment. And was that scripted, or was that the composer's idea to have it sung? And so, did you all have the type of music in mind? Because each music really had powerfully added to the setting and the tone of each piece, and just my emotional connection. So did you think about the music before you shot the film, or was it like all in during post-production when you brought in a composer? When did that happen? How was that process? Thank you.
I had for the music, I always had a sort of idea of what I wanted in mind. There's sort of a folk tale type feeling, and also just sort of something that would help each scene sort of go with the feeling of each set scene. But what happened was William Todd Jones, who was the puppeteer for The Boy, his daughter Lillian Todd Jones and her partner were creating music and they were doing songs. They were creating songs, and I loved their stuff, and I thought, well, I really would love to see what they would do. Gordon Mills, the partner, was doing had never done score work before, but he was intrigued by it. He was intrigued by film work and stuff. And I let him go and play. I gave him an idea of, well, I'd like these sorts of instruments, but I'd love to see what you come up with. And they came back with a song. There's a full song that happens in the credits of the film. And then he did, which was beautiful. She was singing in it, and it started the process for the rest of the film. It actually started from a song. And that was early on, and I played that for everyone performing and building during the making of, when we were doing everything. And that energized people, that kept people going on track on the feeling, because music is a huge part of a puppet film, of any film you ever see. And then he continued on. He did score work, he did sound design, and he went above and beyond and played and just had fun. And it was amazing. So then that was the idea, is music really does drive something. You can have a scene that's absolutely terrible if you look at it with no sound, and you put music to it, and it works. It could be the Oscar-winning moment, and that's the way it works.
Genevieve, did you want to say something?
I just have a great composer, M.J. Minarsky, who did the score for a film I did previously called Ola's Box of Clovers. And all of that music for that was actually recorded in his bathroom. And it was just sort of the same poor approach that we used really in making the film. And it was great. And so I started working with him conceptually from the beginning. But he just understood my sensibility. So I think he just really understood. I didn't have to work with him that much because he just kind of organically understood what the film needed.
Okay. And I work with a composer named Meredith Yanos, and she's a violinist, and she's the ethereal voice you heard. She had actually recorded that track before, so when I was cutting it together, she kind of gave me a bunch of pieces that she had from her past, and it just cut together so beautifully. And it was just great for this peaceful moment before the big scare. So. And I'm working with her currently. Now I have the advantage. I brought her down, and the scene you'll see in an upcoming attraction, she violined like watching the film. So it was really exciting to have her play while watching the film and shredding strings. And it was exciting.
And I work with Shoji Kameda. You'll see a picture of him in a moment. So we have one more question. We're going to go back to the online audience. Steven?
Great, thank you. So Rachel from LA, and this is directed to anyone. Looking at puppet fabrication, I think it's around how do you get the look that you want with being able to achieve what you want, and also it being comfortable. Does anyone want to speak to finding the right materials and what you've used in your work to make that happen?
Not me.
Cable ties and duct tape. That's it. Always consider when building. I always like to consider when building a puppet, the performer that's going to do it, or the person that's going to have to move the thing, is always, or if you're putting a hand inside of a puppet, it's going to get uncomfortable no matter what. But there are things you try and do. You try and put pieces of leather or foam on the inside to cushion and do that, and then provide the band-aids and plasters when they get hurt. That's the. But it's materials-wise, it's using what you feel most represents what you can achieve. Like a costume, you'll go through different fabrics and different materials for texture, for color, for dyeability, all those sorts of things, and it's a huge process to really choose the right things, and it's all about knowing what you need to achieve from your character and where it's going to go.
That's pretty good. And I think finding the right scale for the fabric is also very important. And that's why I kind of stick with Victorian era. Everybody had big overcoat, top coats, so you can hide puppeteers underneath the coats.
I love capes. The capes really are great because you can. We actually have these rod puppets that are sometimes performed like hand puppets because the cape can drape just right, if you get it at the right angle. But hi, Rachel. I would say out there, if you want to use paper clay, try paper clay. It's a great material that I work with and sculpt with. And I love the material. And check it out, paperclay.com, or contact me. I'll teach you.
Sam, I have a quick question. Do you actually sculpt in the paper clay, or do you make a mold and then press the paper clay into the mold?
Both.
You do both.
I do both. I mostly sculpt into it, but there are times when, well, I have a sculptor sometimes who sculpts in Chavant. And so we'll just go the Chavant route and then make a mold and then push the paper clay into it. So there you have it. Those are our questions. And so we wanted to find out from each puppeteer or each artist what they're doing.
Yeah, because
we'll wrap up.
Yeah, it's very exciting because I think I've seen seeds of lots of amazing puppet artists, and now these puppet artists are growing and blossoming, and I'm so excited about all the next projects you guys are all doing. So I think we're gonna see.
Let's start with Genevieve and Toby, and then I'll do mine, and then Kevin.
Well, as I said, I'm working on the feature of Too Loud of Solitude. It's been on a hiatus for a while, and I've just picked it up within the last year and a half, in earnest. And it's already getting a lot of momentum, and we are going to be doing a Kickstarter. But as I mentioned, the project is on hold until the rights get squared away. And they're almost squared away, but we would be in the midst of a Kickstarter right now if it weren't for a couple of snags that we had. So we will be doing a Kickstarter. If any of you are interested in kind of staying abreast of where the project is at, we have a poster over there with a QR code, and if you scan on it, you can be added to our mailing list. So the next thing will be this in its full feature-length glory, hopefully sometime next year.
The Lessons Learned was completed just earlier this year and is in the festival circuit at the moment. So it's just sort of finishing up, and I'm getting it out there as much as I can. With the regards to the next steps, I'm going to be doing, I'm certainly doing another short film. And I'm trying to work out if it's going to be one of the characters you see here, or a completely different way. I'm not sure yet. But hopefully next year, I want to be starting a new project to carry on.
And I'm currently in post-production on the new short film, which is The Mill at Calder's End, which was a Kickstarter campaign. And the picture is locked. I'm just working on sound effects and color correction now, so it's going to be ready for festivals by Christmas, knock on wood.
And we're going to save Kevin's clip for last, because since it's a film talk, he's got an amazing last clip to show you. And I'd like to announce that I am working on the feature film of Yamasong. And so it's called Yamasong March of Hollows. And it's a story continuing on from the short film, where the patchwork girl and the tortoise warrior are seeking to free their world from a tyranny of mechanization. And here's some concept art. This is early in the story where the patchwork girl and her people, the mechanical people called Hollows, are in their prison ship, and it's breaking, falling apart in orbit, crashing to the planet. Another piece of concept art we have introduces the Ovis, who are these ram-like warriors, who are rivals to the tortoise warriors, and they side with the Hollows when they return to the planet to conquer the planet. So those are a couple pieces of concept art. What I wanted to mention is that any kind of endeavor like this requires important partners, and our most important partner for this project is Dark Dunes Productions. Dark Dunes Productions was founded by Sultan Saeed Al-Darmaki, who was one of my top backers for my Kickstarter film, Monster of the Sky. And so we started talking about making a feature film, and I showed him Yamasong, the short film, and he loved it. So now we're working together to do all the pre-production for the film, especially building the puppets and sets. And Dark Dunes is a company that specializes in practical monster effects and puppetry, so they're a wonderful match for what we're trying to do here, and it's an amazing thing that's happening. Dark Dunes is working on their current film, Kids vs. Monster, which I believe I could say is their tentpole film for next year, which stars Malcolm McDowell and a number of other celebrities, and has monsters and creatures. And if you notice in the up top, oops, sorry. Oh no. You've seen all the rest of it, okay. Mallory O'Meara, who's here, is our producer, and she's working closely with us on developing the project. if you notice down here, our own Kevin McTurk, who puppeteered the hobnoblin creature for their shoot. He looks comfortable. Yeah. And I'm very pleased to also announce that I'm working with Ekaterina Sadia, who is a published fantasy and steampunk author, who is also here. And there she is. And we've had a great collaboration, a lot of back and forth in discussing and developing the world beyond where the short film left off. And these are some of her novels. The first novel that I discovered of hers was Alchemy of Stone. I was finishing up Yamasong and was in the bookstore and saw the book on the bookshelf, and it was about a mechanical girl, and my story was about a mechanical girl. So I had to pick up the book and read it, and loved it, and reached out to her to see if she wanted to co-write and co-develop the story. These are some of her other novels. She's written House of Discarded Dreams, Moscow But Dreaming, The Secret History of Moscow, Heart of Iron. She's published 6 novels, and she's also edited a number of anthologies, including Bloody Fabulous, Willful Impropriety, Paper Cities, which was an award-winning anthology in Circus. And I will continue my collaboration with Shoji Kameda, who is one of the founders of Own Ensemble, which is an LA-based musical group that works with a lot of Eastern and Western instruments, a lot of percussion, a lot of real, true sounds. Again, the question of digital versus analog, we'll be using a lot of real drums and real sounds in our soundscape for the feature. And I'll continue working with Shoji on doing that. So that was me. Okay, and a little sneak peek at the puppets that we're building. These are the Ovis clan, the Ram Warriors. This is Geta, who is the lead character of her race, who has to choose between working to mechanize a planet or fight for the independence of the free-minded creatures on the planet. And there are more Terrapin tortoise warrior characters. There's a village elder and a boy. You can see some of the mechs for the mouths, bodies. And the world is populated with a bunch of new creatures, including a seahorse goddess, cloud breathers, cloud breathers who create the clouds in the skies, and bug-like click-clacks. And there's an inventor who plays a big part of the backstory as far as the creator of the mechanical people and his mechanical assistant, Lord Gear. And then a mold of the head of the bird from the original short film, and we're using it to construct a throne. The heads of the birds are actually the arms on the chair of the throne. And then this is probably one of the most important characters of the story. She's the antagonist. Her name is Yari. She's the Queen of the Hollows. And she's a bit of the Queen of Hearts, a bit of Napoleon, kind of all rolled into one. A little bit of Humpty Dumpty, too. And this is constructing her mechanical mouth and her with her armor sitting in the yet-to-be-completed throne. So that's a little tease of Yamasong, the feature film, which is coming soon.
So this is the trailer. I'm going to show you the teaser for The Mill at Calder's End, and then followed by it's a chase sequence that's, the sound is rough and it's not color corrected, but hopefully will give you the right idea, and I hope it's the right exposure. Here we go. And here's the category.
Run, you fool. There was no escape. I summon the great beast.
It's much brighter and bigger. But.
So that concludes our this portion of the program.
Yeah, that's the finishing up of the panel discussion and the online part. And so thank you very much for joining us.